Good morning.
Morning, Rick.
Hi, Melinda. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing outstanding.
Good.
We have a good meeting today.
Good to hear. It's a good meeting every week, though, Rick.
Well, we're trying. We are trying. How's business this weekend?
Business was good. I wasn't there. Scott took over, the owner. I had to step away for the weekend, and it was busy. So I told the guys, I guess I need to step away for more weekends. I don't know.
Not right.
Good for you.
Ray's just joined us.
Good morning, Richard Willimus here.
One.
Hello, Richard. Chipper's with us. Good morning, Tim.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning. I was talking to Brandon over the weekend, and he's selling some cars.
That's good. Gotta
Medicine.
pay for that building.
Got to pay for that building. That's exciting.
Todd just joined.
Hello, Todd.
What's up?
How are you?
Well, how about yourself?
Doing well. Had a great weekend. You?
Yeah, real nice. Real nice. Busy, but nice weekend.
Yeah, I have an 8 and a 4-year-old, so it's never a quiet weekend, should I say?
8 and a 4-year-old. Woo. I can't imagine doing that. Woo.
They especially thank God homeschooling just finished on Friday, so it's our school district is still closed, so we're adjusting. We're adjusting. Let's put it that way. So they're excited for summer because I think we failed spectacularly as teachers. So one profession that I certainly did not miss the mark on was being a teacher. So God bless teachers. They have incredible patience and incredible ability to coach and for coaching others than 8 and 4-year-olds. I seem to struggle there.
We usually get started, if you got a couple of tasks you're taking care of, we usually get started about 5 minutes after. So. You are like me, trying to keep up with some things. We got about 6, 7 minutes to go yet.
Hello,
Hello.
that's me.
So, time zone in Nebraska. That's a good question, right? Time zone in Nebraska. I have to Google that one. No answers? Central.
All right, I'm fully in now, finally.
Rick, you should be able to share. I'm just gonna sit here and admit because it's gonna be some people yet.
Yeah, most of our people here in the company are joining now as well.
So we're gonna have more every couple minutes.
Even with your great work, Ian, most people here internally didn't got the link, so I just sent it in the group chat here. Hopefully they'll find now. Yeah.
Send it everywhere.
Yep. I saw 2 emails. Yeah.
Should be lots of places to find it.
Yep.
They're coming in. Don't worry. Oh.
It's about 9:03. We've got a couple more minutes. We'll wait for some more folks to get on. Kevin Narlin is here. Darren Shankrup. Good morning, Darren. Christian, good morning, sir. Hello, Pam.
Morning. Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Took me a while to find that mute button.
Good morning, Adam.
Morning, Rick. Hey, Ian.
Good morning.
Hello, Ed. Ed McValley is here. Hello, Ed. Good morning. Oh, it's about 9:05. I think we should get this party started. What do you say?
Yep.
So I will share my screen. Here we go. You should be able to see that. Well, good morning. Welcome to week 10 of our Autohub meeting. It is nice to have you all here. Thank you for your attendance. I think we have an exciting meeting for you today. Let's get started in taking a look at some of these housekeeping items that we review every week. Very simple for us, right? This is not my meeting. I didn't create it for me, I created it for you. Please mute and unmute yourself so that there's no background noise disturbing the others. Raise your hand, click on the raise your hand button if you'd like to be called on. We'd like you to participate, of course. I'll moderate the chat box along with Ian. If you have something to add, you can just type into the chat box and we'd invite you to talk. We have a wealth of knowledge on the call, so let's be sure to share ideas, be respectful for each other's time. So keep your conversations to the point and short so that we don't run out of time. Be open to sharing your ideas and okay with others using your ideas. So it's open discussion format. Everyone just chime in, please. We want to improve our business, so that's what it's all about. Your input is valuable. Speak up, bring value, brainstorm ideas, ask questions specifically to the guest speakers that we have on the call today. Please ask them questions. That's what they're here for. They're here to educate us and to teach us how to be more successful. And we get that done best by asking questions, just like we learned in school, right? No question is a stupid question. They're all good questions. Somebody's going to come up with some value in the answer or in another question. So get your questions in. Stay on topic, if you will. Try not to change the subject. Challenge the speakers to bring you content that may help you. Speakers, please no selling of any services or products that you have. This is not the forum for selling, but it is the forum for sharing. So today we're going to talk about digital service drive. The evolution of the service department. How do we tie training and the evolution of what the service department is going to look like in the future? Oh, wait a minute. Is it the future? Is it the present? Guest speakers this week. We have two very exciting, very knowledgeable guys. Todd is the CEO of Go Moto. That's his lovely face right there. Todd, welcome. Thank you for joining us. And Ray Levo. Ray is not only one of the finest and most experienced fixed operations trainers in the marketplace, but he is also a service department and fixed operations instructor at Georgian College. Ray, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here. Excited to talk with you today. Customers' expectations and experiences are different in 2020, right? We're going to talk today about electronic kiosks in the service drive. They're part of our experience in so many other areas of our life. And Ian put together a list of a couple, and if we took the time, we could probably create a much longer list. But customs at the airport, click, 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 touch, 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 on you go. I know personally, I travel internationally a lot, and those kiosks have made my life so much easier. They replaced human beings, of course, waiting online for the person to speak and to review, and the documents are so much quicker, and you get through the airport much quicker with a kiosk than ever before. But the point is that we're creating habits here, right? For the consumer, we're creating habits of expediency and moving through the process quicker. Rental car agencies, self-checkout at the grocery store, at the hardware store, check in at hotels, click, click, click through your app, ordering at McDonald's. You walk in and, well, I don't go to McDonald's, but some people go to McDonald's. That was Ian's idea, by the way. Ian, go to McDonald's. Right? But the dealership is not next. The dealership is not next. Our dealership might be next, but the customer's expectation is now. Customer's expectation is now. So let's learn about that. Let's talk about that today. Vendor speak. I told you in the past weeks that we would have more on that. We have developed a much more feature-rich presentation for Fridays. Going forward on Fridays, our guest speakers will have an opportunity to meet with you one-on-one. So each Friday, one of our guest speakers will set aside 20 or 30 minutes or so to have a private session to share more details of their knowledge and expertise. So let's say that we're talking with Todd today, or talking with Ray, and you say, you know, geez, I think that Ray could give me a hand. I think that he could help me. And you don't want to make the Autohub call a private session. So you might not bring your questions to the table in this meeting, but you may have some questions. I wonder how much he would charge. I wonder how much it costs to have a kiosk in my store. I wonder how much that training costs. I wonder how much that website costs. How much would it be, or what would it entail for me to upgrade my website? Those kind of intimate questions. We're going to give you an opportunity to speak one-on-one with our guest speakers on Fridays. So we're going to just set aside 20 or 30 minutes, maybe 15 if there's not a lot of participants, not a lot of questions. So you can get in, talk one-on-one intimately with one of our guest speakers, and get off the phone. Learn facts about costs, about contracts if they have one, details about what they might bring to the table for you, or just bend your ear. Hey, how does this work for you? How do you do this? What a dealer's learning that you didn't ask on the call. So this Friday, myself and Jim Nauman from CDK Global will talk to you about Performance 20 groups. Just to get you a little bit more familiar with what they are, how they work, why, when, how, and what do they bring to the table? Why do dealerships join a performance group? What are the costs involved? What are the details involved? How can you get involved? Can we do virtual 20 group meetings? Can we do live meetings? Can we customize it? Any questions that you might have, we'll go over that on Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Again, our website is available for you to follow up after the meeting, www.autohubclub.com. Check out the website. The content recordings will be there. Any white pages that our participants fill out will be there, and such and so forth. So thank you so much for your attention here. And then I will introduce Ray Levo. Ray Good morning, sir. How are you? Are you with us?
Ray there, let's see.
Ray has
Can't see him yet. I'm unmuting him now.
He's here. Ray, you're on mute. Ian, take Ray off mute.
He's off mute.
He's off mute. Hello, Ray. Stepped away.
No, he's right there.
He's still here.
Back second.
Okay, let's move over the conversation over to Todd. Good morning, Todd. How are you, sir?
Doing well. Thanks for having me today.
Great. It's great to have you. So let's talk about yesterday's service advisor and today's service advisor. If I were a dealer and I were to ask you, hey, what should I be looking for in hiring a new advisor compared to what I looked for in the past?
It's a good question, and I think I'll provide some full disclosure here. Well, obviously I run GoMoto. We also are a dealer. We own a Volkswagen dealership as well. So I've got a unique perspective in thinking about the world, both as a dealer, but also as a supplier of technology. And I think, importantly, as we've seen kind of the shift in what I call kind of frictionless customer experiences over the last, kind of 7 to 10 years in the drive, we saw it from an e-commerce standpoint where, the salesman's role, for example, has changed a little bit. Our BDCs have become critically important and kind of the skill sets required there to deal with customers, really in a fully digital environment. We're starting to see that transition into the service drive a little bit, and predominantly because of the culture of appointments we've built and service BDCs becoming bigger. We've seen, and what we've tried to hire is advisors that are customer centric first. And what I mean by that is, they're educational, they're conversational, and they have an understanding that, it's more about that experience than potentially understanding, everything as it may relate to a specific vehicle or the product itself. And I think we've come a long way with kind of the tools that we've been able to layer with our advisors, with like electronic MPIs and educating our techs that, have kind of changed that. And that's a similar model you've seen across a lot of, I'd say, larger progressive retailers. They're focusing on, individuals that can be those customer experience advocates versus, say, being very deep product experts and so forth. And that's probably been the biggest change that we've seen in terms of the folks that we're hiring. And we tend to bring in a little bit younger folks that, again, have a little bit more flexibility in terms of learning and being coached in those regards.
So in that sense, how important do you think it is that we embrace an electronic MPI and do it soon?
Well, I mean, to me, it's a fundamental element of how we should be working with customers. Because if you think about kind of consumer preferences, and I think COVID has really shed the light on probably some of the biggest challenges we've seen in automotive, which is e-commerce on the front end, and variable has essentially accelerated companies like Carvana and Vroom, and customers are demanding that, right? And that was the only way by which we were able to kind of sell a vehicle, right, for the most part during COVID. Same on kind of the service side. Customers want to be able to interact with you digitally. And I think if you see the rise of all the texting companies and you see the rise of opt-ins from a text, authorization standpoint at the average dealership, that's the primary means by which consumers want to engage with you, right? The second then becomes kind of email. And then, there's always that kind of, phone call, telephone kind of conversations and face-to-face. But being able, and just think about it from a psychological perspective as a consumer. If I'm a consumer and you come and I drive into your lane, and you do the walk around, you present me with 5 items before you've even really looked at the car and diagnosed it, there's what we call the consideration period, where consumers are frankly put back, right? And they kind of crunch up and say, I don't know if I'm comfortable purchasing that. but give that customer 30 minutes and come back with an electronic presentation and video or photos and a very specific description of, you know, the brake pads or the tires and things of that nature, things that we found. That consideration period, customers feel much more comfortable knowing that, you know, you've looked at the vehicle, you're making a specific recommendation, and oh, by the way, here's the factual evidence to prove that, right? In a very constructive way, and allowing a consumer to make that decision. You can see, I mean, you look at all of the electronic MPI platforms that are out there. I mean, the upsell ratios typically tend to be about a 3-to-1 from what we've seen. By delivering an electronic MPI and then an uplift per RO is pretty significant when you're presenting a electronic MPI to every customer.
So run that number by me one more time. What did you say?
3 times more likely to sell additional work than doing it initially on the drive.
You know, I want to share a story with you that goes along with something that you just said. My brother had some struggles in his service department with upsells. He was doing a decent job with MPIs, wasn't doing a decent job with closing the deal. So he decided to sit down in the service department waiting lounge and just watch what's going on and what happens. And he witnessed the advisors coming out on a consistent basis and sit down with the customer, review the MPI. And he, as I say, he was doing a pretty good job with the MPI. So he's got a good MPI. Of course, it's handwritten, right? And he's got it in his hand. And they sat down, did a decent job explaining to the customer what they found with the vehicle, but they still weren't getting anywhere. So he said to them, they're still getting declined. So he said to them, you know, let's do this. Let's show that to the customer and then walk away and give them an opportunity to breathe for a minute or two. And don't ask them for a commitment. Just review it with them and tell them, hey, we'll be back in just a few minutes once you have an opportunity to digest this. What do you think happened as soon as he walked away?
Yeah, consumers take more time, they research it, they understand the critical nature of it. It's that consideration period, because, you know, consumers, right? We're all consumers. We like to be able to control the, you know, frequency, the speed, the convenience, the transparency. We like to control that in the buying experience. And so, you know, most customers, you know, are fearful when presenting something saying, make a decision right now.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they saw an increase, you know, per RO and total number of services sold.
And this is the first thing that happened. As soon as they walked away, here come the phone. And who do you think they called? Well,
They call their partner, their spouse, exactly, somebody to get, you know.
How are we going to come up with this money? What are we going to do? And he found that when he gave him 7 minutes to make a decision, then walked back over and said, hey, how's things going? Did you have an opportunity to digest this? Guess what happened? Right? You know, he started closing those deals. And I think that's what this separation between the pressure that the consumer might feel. Hey, Ray, there he is. There's his smiling face. How you doing? That separation of time where the customer might feel pressured into making a decision is eliminated when we have technology to communicate. So, Ray, welcome. Still can't hear me. You got a microphone?
Rick, I'll bring one point up to you that I think is important as we get Ray connected, is that, you know, if you look at what consumers' complaints are traditionally when they come into our drive, you know, the biggest thing that consumers don't have enough of is time, right? So think about that also in terms of how you create that kind of experience when customers come in. Does your customer who has an appointment and it's 8 a.m. have to wait 15 to 20 minutes, right, to get through that check-in process? You know, they are not going to buy additional services. But if you can get them in and out and then get them on their regular kind of cadence or cycle in terms of when you're presenting that post MPI to them, whether they're waiting, whether, you know, they've left and gone to the office, again, it just supports that customer experience and then that conversion ultimately of what we want, which is upselling that customer based on their required work. So something really important to think about.
Ray, you with us now?
I think you may have to dial in. I'll just send him the details.
Yeah. Okay. So Ian, what do you think that is one of the important things that Todd should be telling us about today?
Well, I want to talk a little bit about sort of my interest in kiosks, but also sort of some research I've done myself, and I want to get Todd's thoughts on that. I had the opportunity during my MBA, I actually talked to a gentleman who was behind the kiosks at McDonald's. And I think one of the biggest fears from McDonald's franchisees and also employees was, well, this thing's going to replace us. And the thing that was interesting, talking to the marketing gentleman, was that actually what happened was they needed more staff because the speed of orders was faster, but also what people bought was more significant. And the reason was kind of interesting from my point of view, was that people, when they have physically people behind them, they order less at McDonald's because they perceive the person behind them that they're holding up their order. When they replaced it with a kiosk, that was eliminated. So they had a new problem, which is they couldn't make the food fast enough initially. And ironically, I was in a drive-through yesterday, and they're now even doing this in drive-throughs where it suggests a different beverage. Like they're trying to upsell it, but it's also suggesting, would you like this beverage on a different screen in drive-through? So when I look at kiosks, I think they're a great piece of technology, but I think there's got to be some fear, and I'd love to get Todd's thought on that as he installs these in dealerships.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. It's one that we hear, frankly, from every dealership, and there is a fear factor. And I've had many of GMs joke, the only time the kiosk really replaces you is when you don't show up for work. You call in sick, you have a bad attitude, or you fail the drug test. And that's a reality in our business, because if you look at the NADA numbers, right, I mean, our turnover is astronomical in our drive. And there are kind of two scenarios, right, where, should I say, the self-service element really kind of come to play, and I'll explain this. The first is, you have a growing Subaru Audi dealership, right, that say you have 3 advisors, but you really need 4, possibly 5. And it's, expensive all in. I think, the average, full FTE for a service advisor is about $68,000, right? So instead of making that additional investment, they'll put in kiosks to help support that, but make those advisors much more efficient so that the check-in experience can be more fluid. And then, because we're having a little bit more volume, we're going to allow those advisors to be successful. And in those stores, what you typically see is Ian, you're right, they'll bring in, for example, a greeter. And those are big kind of Toyota stores that and Honda stores that have kind of the same elements. You may see what I call redistribution of headcount, where you may have had, for example, 14 advisors. You may now have 10, but you now are putting those 4 kind of junior advisors into this kind of customer advocacy or customer concierge role, where they're actually guiding the customers from, kind of initial greet through the kiosk and then kind of into the transportation setting. So you typically see that. And what we found is once advisors really understand that, this tool is here to help them, because what we always ask advisors are, what are your 2 biggest challenges every single day when you come in? Number 1 is we don't have enough time. And number 2 is, I want more opportunity. Okay, well, what chews up your most time? Well, it's the customer that comes in and, I've got a line of 5 of them, and I've got, all these appointments backed up. I can't spend the time, effort, and energy to build those relationships properly because I feel hurried, and then I miss all these other steps and I lose that opportunity. So if I could get that time back, guess what? The customers that want to come stop and say hi after the check-in, great, they can. The ones that don't, fantastic. But what it allows me is to sell every single customer that NPI electronically and do it efficiently so I can make that more money. But inevitably, it does happen where I have stores, to be frankly, that may have, say, 8 advisors, and, they lose that last one that's kind of the, troublemaker per se, and they don't backfill that. They take that capital and they redeploy it, for example, in the service BDC. To ensure that we're getting there. So there's a lot of different models per se. There's not a one size fits all, but traditionally you see headcount accompanying the kiosk solution to be able to help support that exchange and educating customers.
And I had another question. Do customers, do they tend to buy more often because it's a consistent process? Does that impact sales versus, say, that morning rush at standard dealer?
It does. I mean, we typically see, right around a 20 to about a 35% uplift, depending on the brand. of customers actually selecting an upsell upon check-in. And the reason being is why, we as dealers, have kind of been challenged, is that it provides a consistent experience every single time. So, the elements that Ray and Rick will talk about, providing a fantastic training program, this is what the kiosk can deliver, consistently every single time. And so when you see those upsells, customers feel more comfortable because we're asking for wiper blades every single time. We're presenting the hunter alignment every single time. We're asking if they want to rotate. And so customers feel more comfortable in kind of what we call sundry items, being able to select those items because they, in their conscious know that, hey, I know I'm due, I haven't changed these in a year, and they easily select those items. And so you do see a nice uplift in the kind of pre-MPI selling, which is fantastic.
Ray, are you here now? Can you hear us now?
I don't know. Are you able to hear me?
Oh, yeah.
We can hear you.
You're here. Rock and roll. Thanks, Todd.
You. So I got an important question. Todd he's been very enlightened in in bringing us to a place that we're not there today. But none of that does us a whole lot of good if we don't have a good MPI. And if you're a dealer on this call, I'm not going to embarrass you, but raise your hand, Darren Shankaruk, right? Raise your hand if you're not getting a good MPI on every vehicle that comes in, and you should, right? Raise your hand, Melinda. Raise your hand, Christian, right? So we're not trainers, Ray. We like to think we can train.
Sure.
But we're not qualified, number one. We have tried in the past, and we're not there. We're not there. So how do you get, besides spending $10,000 to bring a trainer into my dealership, how do I get my technicians to be motivated to do a good quality inspection every time?
And I think what Todd talked about a while ago too is that big rush of people coming in. The advisors don't have time to correctly, get the MPI in motion. That's the first start of it. And secondly, do the walk around with the customer on there. That starts generating it. Now the customer knows the expectation of the MPI. But really, when it comes down to the technician aspect of it, it has to be part of your job description. This is required. This is what you need to do, and they need to be held accountable. Simple reason is that we've lost our appointments by 30% now with oil life monitor and so on. I guess the technician shortage has made it to the point that they've got adequate work. They're not really interested in doing any additional service requests, but it just has to be standard, because otherwise we're going to fail to exist. Our intervals are less. What is to be done on the vehicle is much less. And they got to realize that we're really there to make some more money. Why would you want to not take care of this opportunity? And then there's also the liability aspect of it. If we're not inspecting that vehicle and noting everything on there that could be needing some repair, and something was to occur when the customer goes down the road, we're going to be looking at a lawsuit guaranteed. So these are the things that have to be, but it definitely has to be from the top down, and it is just completely the only way you can go about it. It has to be the accepted behavior.
So do we pay the guy, or what? What do we do?
Most cases, most manufacturers have, like FCA, for example, has Peace of Mind that has an inspection included in that. And that way the technician is getting paid on it. If you're doing it strictly on the oil changes, a lot of stores don't pay. So that's totally up to the individual dealership. But when you look at the opportunity of the sell, and maybe you might want to spiff additional service requests, something to that effect, it's probably about 60% are paying the technicians.
So 60% are paying them, you said?
Yeah. From what I'm seeing. 0.3, 3/10.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you feel that paying them has an impact on whether they do it or not?
Well, they're going to grumble about it if they're not getting paid, but when it is part of their job description. But I also, when you're recommending that as a whole package, the works with for the peace of mind with FCA. Most manufacturers again have that, and so the technician is getting paid to do that. He's already got the vehicle in there, and you're going to get a much more thorough inspection as well.
Another area that I think, go ahead, Melinda.
Well, I was just going to say, I know technicians, they take a little while to buy into the process. And so I'm 2 months in at my location, and the technicians that was one of the first things was, I don't get paid to do inspections. I'm not going to do them. But they didn't see the correlation with, you did the inspection, you got the work, we sold the work, now you're getting paid even more. So what we've done is we've spiff them a little bit to do that inspection so that they can see the buy-in process. And now these guys, like I said, I'm 4 weeks into the service bay big time, but 8 weeks into the dealership, and already our numbers have jumped astronomically because they now have bought in. But I've had to coach them that, hey, I'll pay you whatever it takes for you to do that inspection so you're not out money.
Yeah, but this is all, we're all dealers here. We can't, whatever it takes doesn't mean anything to us. What did you pay them?
I pay them 0.2.
0.2. So they're going to get 0.2 for every car. The other thing that I want to throw in there, because I like what you said, Ray, from an accountability standpoint, it's got to start from the top and come down. One of the other elements that I always like to recommend is that we make sure that in our meetings, we tell the technicians, our service advisor is going to promise every customer an inspection, period, end of story. So know that when the car comes in, that customer's been promised. And if we don't tell the technician that the advisor is promising an inspection, if you don't do it, you're the cog in the wheel, because the customer has been promised at the time of write-up that they'll get an inspection.
I think just building on 2 points on that, you mentioned is, educating it and transparency is really, really critical, because I see, and listen, we struggled when we bought the dealership about bringing those numbers and kind of the overall performance of kind of the fixed ops department into the technicians so they can understand that link. But then it's also, and I see a chat going in on the side, is making sure we have the tools there so that, I saw one person put the pushback there about, the videos and advisors not making the recommendation. I think it's really important that we have a tool there to be able to make it easy for the techs, but that the expectation is created on the front end, and the delivery mechanism is simple and easy, but that you also in your team meetings report on that on a weekly basis. Because if you can go and say, okay, listen, we had, let's just say 500, ROs written, this month, we only presented, 320, recommendations, you can start to find the accountability, lapses there and manage to it. Because at the end of the day, if you can manage it, but you got to have the simple tool to be able to track it so that it makes your job a lot easier in communicating the effectiveness, which we found to be pretty successful in a lot of good dealerships.
Yeah,
that's a really good point, Todd. As well, like when you have your leaderboard, which I hope everybody's doing in their shop, tracking technician productivity, you also have that same kind of closing rate on MPIs. And it won't be very long before the guy on the bottom doesn't want to be on the bottom anymore.
Well, hold on now, Ray. And I know, Tiago, you want to get in, and you're next. Hold on a second, Ray. Tell us again about the board. What does that look like?
Well, like a leaderboard in the shop where you track the technician productivity on a daily basis. And so the whiteboard shows the productivity of each individual tech throughout the day, but you could also then have an MPI closing rate posted on there as well by technician, and just so that the peer pressure will shine a light on their performance alone.
The other thing that I saw, and I years ago worked for Dealer Effects, the other thing I saw as I talked to technicians all over North America, even in small dealers and large dealers, was that the technicians that did the MPI, a lot of them did the MPI, they weren't confident that it was being presented every time. They were like, yeah, I'm doing this piece of paper and I never get the work. There was a communication disconnect there between the service writer team and the technicians. They were like, we're doing this, we're happy to do it, but we never see any work from it. Why is that? So that's another
really important.
I recommend having.
Yeah, Ian, that's why it's so important. You got to have a digital asset to be able to track those MPIs. Because like you said, on paper, we have no way of tracking. If it's done electronically, we've got the correct phone, email information. You can track how many were sent out, how many were actually opened, and you can track those conversion rates, right? And then you can actually build, you know, and I think Ray said it well, you know, it's hard because you're building something that should be done as part of your job spec and you're paying additional revenue, right? Who tends to do that, right? But, you know, the question then becomes, once you have that data, you can manage through that data and create better spiffs based on the actual performance. So if you have, you know, technicians that are presenting with those advisors and doing better, well, guess what? Maybe they get a kicker at the end of the month if they exceed a certain threshold. So there's different ways to use that, what I say kind of, you know, budget dollars efficiently to drive the activities.
Yago, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, I agree with the idea everybody's building that needs to come from top down, that clarity and transparency in the pipeline of actions that can be visualized by our teams. I shared an idea with Ian the other day. He's a former trainer, and how important is we've had in other Autohubs the importance of how people learn, right? So some of our people, technicians, service drive, or parts guys, they're more logically driven. Others are more emotionally driven, and that communication gap. And some are just credibility based that have a high ego, like some of our customers. So how are we paying attention and how do we communicate value? So I agree with the discipline and exercises. So you build a behavior, then that builds value, but then there's the human aspect that will drive the culture that we are trying to build. And in a few of meetings that I've been participating in COVID-19, digital retailing is huge, but also a lot of people are thinking, okay, what culture do I have and what do I need to modulate in the future, in the new normal, so we can break this bridge between variable side and fixed ops side. Just thought I would share that. Ian has great experience with that. He might want to chime in.
Yeah, I mean, I had the opportunity years ago to work with a group in the US called the Hendrick Automotive Group, and they're very big on personality testing, which was very interesting from a training point of view, because on their name badge, they would have their personality profile. And sometimes we fall down as trainers because we're training in a certain way, and we're not hitting all the people in the room because they learn differently. So what was interesting about their point of view was, I think they used the DISC system. They could really tailor that training to the individuals in the room so that they all not only got it, but also that they would get the result from that training. And they were very big on it and very successful. I think they have about, I don't know, 100 stores or something like that. Yeah. At the time, I think it was 93. But, you know, they were very focused on, you know, let's tailor the training to the people in the room and let's make sure that we're connecting that personality so they get it. And I think sometimes as a trainer, we fall down where we're maybe delivering training in a general sense to a big audience. We're not really focusing on who's in the room. People learn differently. So you really need to that.
I think you brought up an important point though, which is defining what culture is. So you know, as Ian mentioned, we manage people differently based on their skill sets and so forth. But you hit on a very important element, which I cannot stress, you know, stress enough the importance of, which is what is your dealership's experience going to be, right? Both on the variable and the fixed ops side. And when I challenge dealers to really think through this strategically, I say, what is your strategic plan, right? So when you think about, you know, and I just take our dealership, for example, right? We're outside of Philadelphia. We're across the field literally from cornfields. So, you know, we are a destination store. You aren't driving by there and saying, hey, I'm buying a Volkswagen today or, you know, a used Wrangler. You got to find us. And so we created, you know, even before COVID happened, that we were going to be a kind of frictionless online, deliver at home. You can do most of the transaction online, penny perfect payments. And that was the type of experience we were going to deliver. And then we ended up changing our staffing requirements to ensure that, you know, the team that we hire could be able to support those types of dialogues, because most of it was done digitally. Right. And then we've done that the same on the fixed side as well. And so you need to make that, you know, declaration of how we are going to sell and how we are going to service vehicles. And you're going to do that, but then you need to spend the money to actually educate your customers, because a lot of people will say, hey, we're going to do digital retailing, or we're going to do kiosks, or we're going to do, tablet write-ups. But if you do not then spend the time, effort, and energy to educate the people on how to deliver that experience to the consumers, it falls flat. And then you're spending money for, technology's sake, and that's not going to solve the problem, right? So define what you're going to be and how you're going to be, and then create the plan to go execute it.
I think that you make a strong point there, Todd. And that kind of circles back to some of the things that we've been talking about a couple minutes back. And that is, once the inspection on the consumer's vehicle is complete, how do we get this stuff sold? How do we get this stuff sold, right? So then we put it into the hands of the advisor. And this is when I'm bringing Ray, if you could kind of talk to this issue or this question, how do we get that sold? So we give it to the advisor, and we ask the advisor to make a presentation to the consumer. The advisor, his background and history is he was a technician. He was a salesman who failed, and we put him into the service drive and made him a service rider. Right? He's laughing at me now, right? No, right? Pam's laughing. It's funny, right? But it's true. It's true. Or he came from another industry, and we taught him there at the dealership how to be a service advisor. We spend $30,000 or $40,000 a month in advertising, but we don't invest any money in teaching that poor guy or that gal how to sell, how to overcome an objection. Can you speak to that, Ray?
Absolutely. And that's something you're absolutely right, that they present it, this is going to be $500, customer turns it down, that's where it ends. But they need to have systematic, and it's all training, step by step, all the way, how to present. And especially when you've got something as valuable as the MPI, sell the green, start building that relationship. It all starts on the walk around, but you still have that relationship going forward. These recommends, you know what, your blood pressure's in good shape. Your cholesterol, like the yellow stuff, is not quite so good, but you know what, this is something you need to address every day. So as you gradually do the build, but it has to be a systematic method of, and there's a lot of time that needs to be spent so that they make that proper presentation. And even if that fails, you may want to look at as a closer on the floor, like a floor manager. We have it in the showroom. They work deals all the time. And in service, perhaps you've got, my best luck has actually been BDC staff, because they're used to presenting values and benefits when they're selling, which is the key to the entire thing. Customer needs to know what's in it for me. And if they're not seeing that value or perceiving that value, they're going to pass. And if that advisor isn't giving you all those steps and all those points, they're just going to close the door. It's much easier for a customer to say no. But as I said, failing that, you may want to look at a floor closer as well, and it's going to increase your business exponentially.
Is it, I don't want to get into selling training. Believe me, we're not here to sell training, but is it a major expense to have some virtual training for advisors? Is that a big expense?
Not relative to what you're losing.
Not relative to what you're losing. Isn't that an amazing answer? Isn't that an amazing answer? You know, and then it goes into the question that Melinda typed into the chat box. Hey, I got an advisor that is presented with a customer that's very close to him, that services their car with us quite often, regular customer, purchased a car from us a year ago, used. So it's a Hyundai Sonata, just bought it 9 months ago, just bought it a year ago. And he got a laundry list coming from the technician of $4,000. What's the approach that we take to present that $4,000 ticket? How do we handle that? Because it's a tender conversation, right? You got a $9,000 car and it needs $4,000 worth of work.
Well, I think you have to look at the number of miles that are on the car at this point, how long they've had it for a year, and maybe get in touch with the used car manager you don't want to hit them in the stomach with $4,000 right off, but prepare it, prioritize things.
How do you,
And, you know,
how do you prioritize
sorry?
it? How do you prioritize it?
The 4,000, break down what exactly is the $4,000 for. If part of it is just regular routine maintenance, that's one thing. If there's actual failure components that, if it was a certified pre-owned, should they have been identified before? It's a matter of the importance of it and how to best present it that way. And maybe the car had some problems before it went out. You know, we don't know this at this point. But that's the prioritizing of it, is the safety aspect of what could be put off to the next time. You know, the tires are at 5 millimeters, more than 50% worn, but you're good for another 6 months, however you want to present it that way. But you can't just give him a stomach punch, because he's gonna walk, and then you're gonna lose everything.
Yeah, dangerous.
The other thing, Rick, just to weigh in really quickly, because that's always a sensitive one in the retail side, because the dealerships get such a bad name when they find stuff, legitimate stuff. But then the guy goes home and says, well, the dealership tried screwing me because I've been getting it serviced to Jiffy Lube, and now I take it to the dealership and it needs $4,000. But I think the other thing you can do is you can have an escalation level. So anything over $1,500 gets presented by the service manager, or just a second step in there that says, hey, we've taken a second look at this. We're going to manage this along with the customer, because they don't want that $4,000 any more than anything. And sometimes you get some enthusiastic people. And so you need to just make sure that, does it really need that? And is that just a whole bunch of preventative that's you know, the high grossing, high opportunity hours for the tech, right?
Well, and sorry guys, the one other thing too is, if that number is over, you said $1,000 or $1,500. Well, if that number is $4,000, even if it's on a $30,000 vehicle, that vehicle does have some mileage on it, or it does have some time in it. Maybe that's one that, like Melinda, this is the general manager or the dealer coming down and have a conversation, because they can even guide them into the new vehicle or the used vehicle team. Whereas the service department doesn't really, unless they get spiffed on it, they're not going to get the benefit of kicking that vehicle over to sales. You're retaining the customer, or maybe it really is time to move out of those vehicles, but having a total team tiered approach where you have service advisors, service manager, general manager. Again, even if you have someone whose name's on the side of the building talking to you about something that they genuinely want to retain your business, you're likelier to get more of it.
Imagine that. Imagine that. Yeah, if you're a GM on the call, when's the last time you spoke to a service customer? Right, to close a deal. Imagine the impact on your staff. If you get in there yourself and go close a ticket for $1,700, imagine the impact on the technician that got wind of that, right? Outstanding stuff. So Pam, you mentioned a customer advocate in the dealership presenting the service quote. Tell us a little bit more about what you mean there.
What I mean by that is, earlier they mentioned that if you, instead of having a lot of service advisors, you would have 10 service advisors and maybe 2 customer advocates that actually really are service advisors, but they know how to present the quote, work with the customer, and create that relationship, because women in particular feel like they're always getting ripped off, when in fact that isn't the case. It's just the assumption that we don't know anything about vehicles. So if you're working with the same advisor every single time, then you're more likely to trust what they have to say, trust their recommendation, and know that perhaps that work really does need to be done, and then you secure that work. Because if it's a different person and they're always in a hurry, and you need this and this and this, and they don't really know how to sell, as you mentioned, probably 50% of the work is just walking out the door, going somewhere else, because they're going to look for it cheaper.
Mm-hmm. Outstanding. Good perspective. Certainly, a relationship is, a critical element. So it's getting to be 9:53 here in Mountain Time, and we would be remiss if we did not share with each other what does an entire, from beginning to end, consumer electronic kiosk experience look like. And we have that professional, that expertise on this call. So Todd, I'm going to ask you, I don't want you to sell your product, but I do want to understand clearly, what does the whole process look like from beginning to end, electronically, using the kiosk and electronic MPI. So digest that for a second, and I'll ask you to give us an answer before we leave. Christian, did you have something? Did you have a question?
It wasn't so much a question as just much as a comment, I guess. When we're talking about selling work to someone, and we have a large bill or whatever, and I think we're naive to think that if we present a customer with a bill for $1,500, $2,000, and they don't do the work, they go take that bill to some local repair facility, they want to believe a lower quote. So if the local repair facility gives them a quote for $1,000 instead of our $1,500, that other facility may not be doing as good a job as we were going to do, but the customer's going to want to believe the lower one, and they're going to want to think we try to rip them off. That's just the space we're in. And quite frankly, if I owned a little independent store, I would hit you pretty light too the first time and try to reel you in over time and get all that work anyways. So I think you just have to be mindful of that. And again, when it comes to delivering the quote and delivering the details, is that the customer learns to know that this is required, recommended, and you're okay.
Yeah, so that goes to the question then, Christian. If I am your consumer and you tell me $1,500 and I say no for whatever reason, is it, and I'm still there, I'm still at the store, or you're still engaged in a conversation with me, is it time for us to start lowering our prices and discounting our labor and discounting the parts in order to close the deal?
I wouldn't be opposed to that per se, but I think the first step is to make sure the customer is feeling fully consulted, so they understand what we're suggesting, what work we're suggesting to get done, and maybe we go through and pick, 3 things that they should do today and 3 things they can push off for a couple months to manage their budget better. But I mean, if we're overpriced, we're overpriced, and we'll have to deal with that. And I'm not opposed to being competitive, but I don't think we really are overpriced.
No, I don't think so either. Anybody else want to touch that discount question? Nobody wants to touch that hot button, huh? Ray?
I would do it not to lose the business, but that's not my first spot.
Right. I'm still, so you would do it, Christian?
I would do it potentially, but that wouldn't be the first run at it, for sure. I think discounting comes at the end.
That's something that's something that I do touch on as well, is that once you start discounting it, first of all, you're saying to the customer that you believe that what we're presenting doesn't really have the value of what we're charging for it. And once you set that in your mind, then you also get into the fact that when you discount it once, you're going to be doing it again and again. And what if this particular customer spoke to his neighbor, they got that job done for less? You could lose both of them. But it's a matter of prioritizing it, what needs to be done. But really, in all cases, stay away from discounting because of all the repercussions that happen as a result of it.
And I agree 1,000% with staying away from discounting. The one opportunity you can find when you escalate it up the ladder is you can have the conversation with the customer that says, you know what, while we're doing this, we can also do this job and we can save a little bit of labor because the tires will be off, or we're going to have this done, or while I have it on the hoist, I can actually save and I can be more efficient with my time the more we do. And so you go to, if the more jobs you do, the more efficient you are, then that's not discounting, but the customer sees it as getting a bit of more value there, and you haven't jeopardized your pricing structure at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good point.
Real good point. Real good point. Okay, so Todd, step by step, beginning to end, share with us, what does the digital experience look like?
I think it starts obviously with an online, good scheduler, which we all have, right? So that makes sense. But what's happened in the last 90 days has really kind of transformed the way we should think about the experience. So traditionally, we've always had, right, either the reader process, or more recently, we've had obviously kiosks to help support that. But we see it kind of more of a, kind of a three-pronged process. So customers that do have an appointment, I'll take you through that very quickly, right? We need to offer them kind of three options, right? The first is to be able to check in 100% kind of mobilely when they get into the drive. So, for example, when that customer is sitting at home, 24 hours prior to, they can actually initiate that check-in experience. You send them a text, email with the workflow, they go through it, they can do some upsells, gives us tremendous amount of intel, but gives the consumer the control and the experience to get that QR code just like you would, when you're checking in for an airline, so they can literally scan it and go when they get there, both either kind of indoor or outdoor, right? If the customer chooses not to use that mobile check-in process, again, having the ability to come in and look themselves up and get through a check-in experience off kind of the kiosk in 2 minutes or less is really critical. Because again, I talked about this, time is probably the most important thing to consumers. And I'll give you one example. In our Highline stores, everyone told us, when we started the business, you guys were crazy. Highline customers like to kind of have that process slow down, spend 15, 20 minutes. We actually found, the opposite happened. The reason is because if you look at your average Audi, BMW, kind of Mercedes store, and the majority of vehicles leased and sold in there are traditionally to that 30 to 40-year-old consumer, which are what? Technology, advanced. They, value time. They're typically professional. So what's interesting happening, they're coming in on appointments. Most Highlines have 80, 90% appointments anyways, literally checking in. Their satisfaction scores in CSI have all gone through the roofs because, again, they're catering to that customer based on how they want to be dealt with. And that's really, really important. And I think as we kind of move into the social distancing world, giving those consumers those options of kind of either the mobile check-in or kind of the kiosk element, so they're not having to work, with a human, and standing 6 feet apart is really, really critical. And then ensuring that, hey, listen, if a consumer does check in either of those two methods, but does want to meet with an advisor, we got to make sure that's accessible as well for a consumer. And I know we're hitting on time, so I want to be respectful of that, but think about that from an overall totality of your customer experience. Are you giving them fast, efficient, transparent ways to get in and out of your dealership in 2 minutes less? Big challenge I have for every GM and service director on the calls. Go sit in your drive on a Monday like today or a Saturday morning and see how long it takes a consumer to go through that process and what their feedback is.
Outstanding.
Wow, great numbers.
Okay, so I want to thank everyone for participating today. I want to thank everyone for being with us today. I'm going to invite Todd to do a Friday session to learn more about his product. I certainly would like to have a product demonstration on that call. I'm going to, so Todd, if you would call myself or Ian.
Sure.
After the meeting, we're going to put you on the schedule to have that Friday one-on-one session so that we can have a product demonstration. And the same thing with Ray. Ray, if you could reach out to Ian after the meeting here, we'd like to get you on a Friday call as well, just to give us some background and an opportunity to speak.
Sure.
So much appreciated. All of our participants in today's meeting, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to have you here. Ian, any parting words?
No, I really appreciate sort of the expertise in the room, and also the expertise, obviously, from our great speakers. And, I thank everyone for being on the call. It was a great call.
Superb.
Thanks,
Yes.
everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Here.